All right, everyone. So welcome to the Black Botanist Week career panel, Black Botanists at Work. My name is Maya Allen. I'm one of the co-organizers for Black Botanist Week, and I'm going to be your moderator for this fine Thursday. Before we introduce our wonderful panelists, I'd like to go over some housekeeping rules. Questions for our panelists were solicited during Zoom registration. However, we will be monitoring the chat both on YouTube and here in the Zoom to kind of weave in those real-time questions. Attendees will be muted, so please feel free to put those questions in the chat. Zoom attendees are eligible to win a personalized small plant brush sponsored by the Zeta Phi Beta Omega Alpha Zeta chapter. And that winner will be announced at the end of the panel discussion. So stay tuned for that. All right, well, let's get to our panel. First, I'd like to introduce Mr. Phakamani Xaba, the principal horticulturist at Kirstenbosch National Botanical Garden. Located in Cape Town, South Africa, Kirstenbosch is the oldest botanical garden in South Africa, and Mr. Xaba is also a specialist in cycads.
Thank you, Maya.
So you can speak for 2 minutes on whatever you'd like, just expand on your introduction.
Thank you. My name is Phakamani Xaba. It's Xaba. We here we almost click the X. We don't Z it like in the States. Yeah, I'm a horticulturist here at Kirstenbosch, a botanical garden. We specialize on indigenous flora of South Africa and Southern Africa at large. Our main mandate is conservation. We work with various different flora, obviously being situated in Cape Town. Our garden mainly focuses on the Cape Fynbos, one of the floral kingdoms. However, my group of plants that I work with is cycads, which are more in summer rainfall areas of our country. You know, if you are a botanist, horticulturist, any person who works with biodiversity, South Africa is such an incredibly rich country in terms of biodiversity, particularly plants. So, and the conservation of that is quite an urgent sort of a matter. Also, the exploration, there's still a lot of exploration and so on. Also, one of the things that are a passion I do have is useful or medicinal plants in general. There's still a lot of work in that sphere in terms of looking at product development that were traditionally used by the indigenous people of sort of the South. And apart from also working with those things, we work with also the IUCN, both here in Africa and in other continents, conserving particularly cycads in my case. And yeah, so we'll take and exchange ideas and lessons through that fora of the IUCN and other international sort of organizations that we collaborate with generally. Yeah, thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. We're also joined by Dr. LaShunda Anderson Hodges, who is an associate professor at Southern University, one of the US's historically Black universities, the lead research for their industrial hemp program, and the director of the Zeta Phi Beta Sorority Incorporate and US Fish and Wildlife Partnership.
Good evening, everyone. Well, afternoon, some people, morning still for others. I want to thank you all for, first of all, inviting Zeta Phi Beta Pearls in the Wild to be a part of this conversation. Just a little background about myself. I am the daughter of a retired ag teacher and a retired English teacher and I'm from Tupelo, Mississippi. Also, I attended Alcorn State University in Lorman, Mississippi, where I received my BS degree and master's degree in soil and plant sciences. And I went to LSU and I earned a PhD in agronomy with environmental planning and management. So I am an agronomist with diverse experience. I have worked with shiitake mushrooms. I'm working with hemp. I've worked with switchgrass, and I've also done phytoremediation work to see how can plants be used to clean up contaminated environments. I have been a member of Zeta for 20 plus years, and I'm very excited about our partnership with U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. So as I tell my students all the time, remember that plants are people too.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Mr. Terry Whittaker is the Senior Recruitment Specialist for the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and helps lead the service's effort to identify and recruit talented individuals for job opportunities with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, particularly individuals who fill their mission-critical job series. Would you like to elaborate, Mr. Whittaker? Terry?
Can everyone hear me?
I can hear you. Can you hear us?
Yeah, there was a freeze there and everyone was frozen in time. Sorry about that.
No, you are fine. You are up though.
Oh, okay. Technical difficulties. Well, hello everyone. My name is Terry Whittaker, and I am the Senior Diversity Recruitment Specialist for the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. I am a wildlife biologist by education, by trade. I've worked for the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service for 21 years, and I've had the opportunity to work through several programs, one being the Partners for Fish and Wildlife program, where we actually go out and work with private landowners, creating wetlands on their properties, and particularly involved with the effects of wetland plants on, clarifying the water and improving the habitat for wildlife. So that's kind of the extent of my botany career. However, I've worked through our Department of International Affairs, Congressional and Legislative Affairs, External Affairs, and most recently the Office of Diversity and Inclusive Workforce Management, where, like I said, I serve as the senior recruiter for the agency. And so we work with external partners, especially with Zeta Phi Beta. We work with HBCUs, or historically Black colleges and universities, and other minority serving institutions on various targeted recruitment efforts to diversify our workforce. And so I'd be happy to talk more about those efforts as we progress through the panel. Thanks.
Thank you. And last, but certainly not least, Mr. Will Rogers, a native of Ellaville, Georgia, has been in awe of the natural world his entire life. Losing both parents at an early age instilled in him the importance of education and determination in overcoming obstacles and achieving goals. His quest for knowledge led him to the University of Georgia, where he continues his 20-year career. His current position as a conservation research professional at the State Botanical Garden of Georgia has allowed exposure to a host of new and interesting plant species. He sometimes uses his background in psychology with the motto, "Plants are like people. They just want to be happy and productive."
Thank you, Maya. I'm Will Rogers, a conservation research professional here at the State Botanical Garden of Georgia at the University of Georgia. I've been in my current position for almost 4 years now. And like I said before, my time at UGA has been 20 plus years. My focus before this position was carnivorous plants, which they have a special place in my heart because you just don't expect a plant to have a diet that's somewhat similar to a snake. And so studying that plant species, I would say, is my favorite. And I'm looking forward to chatting with all of you and answering lots of questions.
Wonderful. Thank you all so much for being here. If we could just give our panelists a round of applause here. You could do it through your camera or through Zoom. Okay, so let's get into our questions. So these are directed to the entire panel, so we'll cycle through and we'll start in alphabetical order of first name. So Dr. Hodges, you'll be up first. So the question is, what is your job like? What does a typical day in your job look like? What do you do in your day-to-day work? Let's see, you are on mute, Dr. Hodges. Let me unmute you.
Thank you.
Welcome.
I forgot to unmute myself. One thing I will say is a day in my position, you know, we have lots of paperwork. That's with any job that you have. But what I enjoy most is being out in the community and helping small farmers make their goals. Also, I enjoy student engagement because I realize I have to pay it forward, because I would not be Dr. Hodges today if someone had not paid it forward for me. So another thing that my job consists of is a lot of planning and consideration of environmental conditions. So right now I'm working with 2 farmers that would like to start producing hemp. So we have to coordinate with USDA. They come out and work with us. So I have to coordinate partners to get things done, from the seed producer all the way down to the NRCS, the USDA, to come out and help us to make sure that we're giving this, giving our clientele, our small farmers, the best experience they can have with us. And basically training students. That's a lot of it. Training students and helping small farmers in the community. Thank you.
All right, Phakamani. So the question is, what does your job look like? What is a typical day in your job?
Yeah, my typical day in my job. First, I must say I'm very, very fortunate to work here, where we normally say it's the most beautiful garden in Africa. It's at the tip of Africa, in Cape Town. Really a beautiful city. Slopes of Table Mountain. My job is a really good balance between outdoors and office. I've always sort of collaborated my work to be like that. So when I'm in the office, obviously we have living plant collections. Most of them are threatened plants. We've got the oldest living plant collection of cycads here at Kirstenbosch, with the really grand amphitheater with over 500 plants that are extremely endangered. So that's one aspect of it. Sometimes we'd work in the garden itself, where we pollinate. I've got a team where we pollinate plants. We look after the plants. And at times we've got a lab here, different labs where we look at maybe if ever there's reproductive challenges, whether it's tissue culture or looking at pollen sort of work, and other things, or in general. When I'm in the field, it depends. I would be collecting plants or collecting data, for that matter, to see how we can better manage, conserve the plants, or even a greater understanding of the plants. and also conserve. When you say conserve, my colleague was saying earlier on, working with small farmers and so on. We do also do with that with small and large farmers, both here in South Africa and within the African continent and in other continents. So we'll also exchange skills. For an example, in Philippines, Thailand, would host different students and exchange knowledge and skills in general. So yeah, that's a summation of my sort of work in it, not necessarily a day, but generally what I do.
Sounds like a dream. Oh my goodness. How about you, Terry?
Oh, a typical day at work for me is helter skelter, and I love it. No, seriously, I wear several different hats, but what I primarily am focused on are targeted recruitment efforts. So I work with different representatives from different minority serving institutions, planning for what we call conservation career symposia. And that involves partnering with a school or an organization and providing information to that organization regarding exactly how do you find federal jobs. We provide information about how to prepare a federal resume, which is quite different from a private sector resume. We talk about some of the upcoming opportunities that we have with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, be they paid or volunteer internship programs or full-time or part-time employment. I work with veterans organizations as well, providing that same type of information for those individuals looking to make a transition from the armed forces to civilian government. Thanks.
And Will.
So a typical day for me, it's very diverse. So my former position before this one, as I said, we worked with pitcher plants. And so that was a lot of lab work. So DNA and RNA extractions, building genetic libraries. And when I would go into the field, it consisted of emptying gut content and trying to see what the plant had eaten. And we bring that back to UGA and kind of analyze it. And so this position kind of exploded into a lot of diversity. So my position now, I also do a lot of field work, some very challenging sites. So hiking, mountain climbing, sampling plants in different states in the Southeast. I also do a lot of lab work. So still a lot of DNA and PCR, DNA extractions and PCR. I work with grad students and undergrads. We are really big on diversity and outreach. So through the gardens, I also work with little middle schoolers, which is always really cool, doing presentations on carnivorous plants. We also have a mini cryo storage facility. So I upkeep that so we can cryo store seeds and tissues. And I also have a outdoor common garden that we, I guess it's expanded quite a bit over the years. So I keep that up, make sure the plants are alive and happy and healthy. And I will say COVID has been quite the challenge in maintaining all these different tasks. So the last year has been very interesting, but we got through it. And so, yeah, that's some of the things I do depending on the day.
Wonderful. Thank you all so much for sharing. So we'll go in reverse order this time. So Will, you'll be up first. What experience is necessary to be a competitive applicant in your industry? And since so many of you are in kind of more administration roles and you're very familiar with your staff, if you could maybe speak to more introductory positions and then addition to your own would be great.
It's been very interesting, but we got through it. And so skills. So I would say punctuality. So you always want to be on time. And I can't tell you how many times it's mattered, not just for me personally, but just kind of sitting back, watching other people. You never want to be late. You want to be dependable. So that's first and foremost. I do a lot of molecular work and labs, and I know that's not necessarily what a lot of botanists do. But for my position, lab experience, which you can kind of get through intro positions while you're an undergrad in college, just signing on early, doing, they call it grunt work in a laboratory setting, will get you some experience, and you can build your way up through the lab and get more responsibility doing that and get more experience that way. With the botanical side of things, I would say networking, because there's always people who are much smarter than you. And so try to network and learn as much as possible. Ask a lot of questions. Having a background in working with Excel and Word and all the data collecting technologies that you would need, I would say experience with that. But yeah, those are a few things.
Okay. Am I okay? Okay, I would say to be an agronomist or to be a soil scientist, first thing I would say, internships. That is very important. I started out as a soil scientist trainee with the USDA NRCS, which is a natural resource conservation service in Illinois, and I worked there from my sophomore year until I started to go get my PhD. So I have field work experience that helped me gain those type of things. So if it's anything that you want to be on top of, that's your craft. Internships are the way to figure out, is this really what I want to do for the rest of my life? And it's a way, it's kind of like you could try the job on, see, do you like it, see if you got a passion and a love for it. Because I tell students all the time, one advice is, don't go somewhere, just don't chase, and I'm taking this from my sister says this all the time. And she says, don't chase the salary, chase what you're passionate about, and the salary will come. So I would say be a part of, not a financial member, but an engaged member of organizations, networking and professional development organizations in your field. Mr. Whittaker and I, we are products of manners, the minorities in agriculture, natural resources, and related sciences. And I'm like, and sometimes I tell my students, where would I be without manners? So if it weren't for manners, to be honest with you, I wouldn't have gotten my first professional job when I started as a research associate. So sometimes, even when you have a PhD, when you finish, as you say, the grunt work, Mr. Rogers, the grunt work, you start as a research associate, or some people do postdocs to gain up like some research skills. I would also say, make sure in your major that you develop relationships with your professors, because at the end of the day, we are the people that have to write those letters of recommendation for you. And if we don't know you and we don't know your work ethic, it is hard to write a letter for you. And most professors that don't know you that well will tell you no, even though you might have been in 5 of their classes, but you never took the time to develop that connection. So they can't vouch for you. Besides, like, what, he made an A or B in my class, but what type of person are you? So, and always remember, your work and your character, they speak for you regardless. So you have to remember that as you walk through, because when I started my program at LSU, I was the only Black person, and I was the only woman in the agronomy PhD program. So I will say also, you have to know your worth. You have to know your worth, and you have to walk in your purpose. And that means if you got to be the only one, then you just be the baddest only one up in there. Make the room yours if you have to. You know what I'm saying? Don't let that intimidate you. That's all I'm saying. Don't let that intimidate you. You go in there and give your 110 and you'll be fine. That's basically my best advice for students who decide they want to become agronomists or horticulturalists.
Thank you so much. So again, just to reiterate the question for Phakamani and Terry, what experience is necessary to be a competitive applicant in your industry or in the roles that you help fill?
Okay, excuse me, I think I'll take a stab at that. So echoing from the other two, as scientists, experience is always necessary. How do you get that experience? Well, the Fish and Wildlife Service has different opportunities to participate in internships at various levels of your college education. So we have an internship program specifically geared toward freshmen and sophomore students who may not have particularly declared a major yet, or maybe on the fence of what they want to do. So we offer internship opportunities to give them an introduction to the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, an introduction into conservation-related fields, so they can make a more informed decision about, how they want to continue in their matriculation through college. It's definitely important to do internships and develop those relationships with professors as well. I get students all the time coming to me for letters of reference, and like Dr. Hodges said, it's very important to forge those relationships. But as far as more requirements to in the Fish and Wildlife Service, we call them mission critical series, or the 400 series. And those are like all of our scientific series. So wildlife biologists, botanists, agronomists, all of those ology fields, if you will. We have what we call, the word just escaped me at the moment, but necessary courses that are required for those types of fields. So a certain number of hours in zoology, biology, botany, ecology, again, all of the ologies kind of things. So that schoolwork, along with the practical experience, doing the internships, don't be afraid to ask for and sign up for a volunteer internship. Not all of your opportunities are going to be paid opportunities. I know we all want to make money, but sometimes, some of those best relationships are forged through a volunteer opportunity. You're getting your name out there, and it allows those professionals in the field to see who you are and witness your work ethic, like Dr. Hodges said, so that, they're, when your application comes through, they're like, oh yeah, I saw, such and such, I got a chance to work with him or her in this capacity. And it makes it a lot better when we're preparing letters of reference, or even, coming into some of our internships.
Thank you. And Phakamani, can you please speak to the same question?
Yeah, in terms of experience, I suppose currently my job involves a number of different skills that from, as I said earlier on, working in a lab, to doing field work, to managing a living plant collection, or curating a living plants collection. So in that, there's so many different skills that are required. Take for an example, plant identification skills that one needs to be always working on. Here in South Africa, we've got over 20,000 plants that you have to study constantly and up your game all the time. And also, as a science that I enjoy, horticulture, in terms of what are the latest propagation techniques and technologies that are there, swapping nodes and doing experiments that are sort of, give you and answer those questions that you would like to answer. But a big sort of a part of that that assists in all of those things that I've mentioned is having a mindset that is problem solving a mindset, and bringing that even if one doesn't have much skills, but that combined with passion plays a great deal. Some of my students might come, they might not have a really strong conservation background, but because I can see the passion in their eyes and so on, and we'll give them a chance based on that, because we can see this person is so passionate and has got a problem-solving sort of attitude. Yeah, so yeah, that's in a nutshell. I would say that those experiences and yeah.
Thank you. And kind of along those lines, you mentioned, there's a wealth of biodiversity in South Africa, and then you also have the horticulture perspective. Do you recommend that students go to a certain level of education in order to be competitive in your industry, like maybe bachelor's, master's, or PhD? What would be your recommendations in terms of education level?
Yeah. So I would say currently most of the students that we get, or the entry level, the competition has got so high that a master's degree I would say in our industry now, because it's pretty, in fact, we're sitting with a challenge that we've got quite a few people with master's degrees. They don't have jobs. In South Africa, the youth, the unemployment figures are astronomically high, and so even if one has that qualification, that problem-solving mindset that I said, we have to even think about creating our own jobs, in that, but linked to what we do. So many people want to be employed instead of really creating a sort of job. So, it's a culture, it's a slow cultural change that hopefully people can change, not only the educational, getting another degree, but getting skills that can really make a difference to your life and your community.
Thank you so much. Dr. Hodges, can you speak to the same questions? How do careers opportunities differ between different educational levels, either in academia or in the hemp industry?
Well, I would say if you're interested in being just a college professor, PhD, you need to get that. That's number one if you want to be competitive. Now, at some universities, it just depends on the university and their preferences. Master's at the minimum. If you decide you want to come out, now some careers, if you decide you want to come out and you want to work straight up the ladder, like becoming a soil scientist, something like that, you can actually start at the BS level with NRCS or some federal agencies and work your way up. But I still would suggest to students, because I would say master's degree is becoming the minimum, and that's just the way our society is functioning now. Like during my parents' time, they got masters, and having a master's at that time was like having a PhD. So the value of the degrees are changing with society. So I tell my students, you at least need to get a master's if you don't do anything else. But I tell them, get as much education as possible. Even when you are get your PhD, I'm steadily taking certifications and different things to make sure that I stay abreast with the new and upcoming things in my field. Because in 2019, I just became a licensed drone pilot, and I did that because everything in agriculture is trying to go technology wise, but you got to keep up with what's the trends and going on. So I would suggest to students, you need to at least get a master's degree. Whether you're walking into a federal job, academic job, I think that would do you well. Thank you.
Phil, can you also speak to this, please?
I would agree, a master's at the minimum. And also I would say research and look into the different degrees and different programs. So you have plant biology, you have plant pathology, you have crop and soil sciences, agriculture, you have forestry careers. And so I would say going into it, look at all of those and see what kind of jumps out at you, because all of them love plants and study plants. And so, but one aspect is looking at kind of the diseases of plants and coming up with protocols to help save the impaired ones at times. And other ones is looking at the genetics and the functionality of systems in plants and whatnot. So I would say that diversify and know what you want to do. What else? Like I said, always network. And so talking to the different professors in the different degrees can also steer you. And ask them how they got to where they are. I was talking to a student previously who was a little bit unsure of the direction she wanted to take. And so she kind of went around and asked a lot of different professors in different aspects of their career. Like the director of the State Botanical Garden took one path to get to her position. And someone like a professor might take a slightly different path to get to theirs. Someone that goes into the commercial industry might take another path. And so I would say, just talk to as many people that are higher ups in their career as possible and see how they got there.
Oh, I should have saved you for last because that was a perfect seg. But Terry, could you also please speak to the career opportunities that differ between different educational levels?
Sure. So as everyone said, everyone has a different path into their respective careers. I certainly had one path, and actually as a result of that, I was able to navigate through almost all of the various programs within our federal agency. Some people have a very focused path, and they know where they want to go. I had fun along the way, but as far as educational requirements, degree requirements with the federal government or with the Fish and Wildlife Service, more specifically, we have programs, internship programs designed for what we call rising seniors. So those students finishing their junior years of college, going into their senior year, and that internship ultimately develops into a non-competitive opportunity to come into the federal government after they finish their degree. And so while we do have positive education requirements for the different career fields, the actual degree, whether it be a bachelor's degree or a master's degree, or sometimes even a PhD, that degree you have will dictate the GS or general schedule or pay scale level that you come into the service, and you can always work your way up from there. So not all of the mission critical series or all the scientific series, not all of them, they will require a degree, but it's not set in stone that they require specifically a bachelor's degree or a master's degree or a PhD, but again, the level of degree you have can dictate the level in which you come into the service.
Wonderful. So, all right, we got some 15 minutes. Okay, so someone is asking about what path did you all take, a little bit of personal information to your career. So Terry, we'll just start with you.
Okay. Well, so so the two things I ever wanted to do in life was become a veterinarian or a wildlife biologist. And I had the opportunity to spend 10 years in veterinary medicine before switching over to full-time wildlife biology. And so I kind of, changed my focus. I was like, I don't want to do dogs and cats, all day. I'm actually a venomous snake specialist. And so wildlife biology really, really intrigued me. And that really guided me toward, going, full-time wildlife biology. And then once I was in the federal government, like I said, I was having fun. I took risks and I took advantage of the different opportunities that were available. I've gotten to do a lot of work internationally. I've even got to work with the university, some international universities doing some work on reptile species over there. And then that catapulted me into some of our other programs, international affairs, congressional and legislative affairs, external affairs. I like to talk. So it just seemed perfect that a biologist who society says should be a naturally introverted person to be in a position where I'm working with people and addressing people. For those of you who don't know the actual mission of the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, it starts out with the three words, working with others. And that's more of what we do in the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service than actually hands-on work with animals. And that's working with you all, working with external partners, working with other organizations to increase our diverse workforce.
Wonderful, thank you. Phakamani, would you like to go next? And we also have a student asking specifically, what is your favorite part of your job?
Maybe let me answer that first. My favorite part of my job, I must say, I like teaching people. I think that's really learning skills and imparting that. My job, part of my job, because I mentor so many students, allows me to do that. So I really enjoy that. So it combines the outdoor or field work and that for me really, really does it generally. Yeah, if you can please remind me of the initial question.
Certainly. They're curious to know, what path did you take to obtain your career? What's your personal story?
Yeah, so my path was initially, I was really interested just in plain botany, but I found that I really enjoyed problem solving and poking around things and so on and so on. And horticulture interested me much more, and I was more strongly so I decided to study that, mainly also conservation, not the aesthetic sort of horticulture in that sense. Although I do enjoy plants, generally they are beautiful, but I wanted to do that in a conservation sense. In South Africa, having the context of our old colonial and apartheid, people of color like myself couldn't acquire degrees in certain things or study in certain field or even do research for that matter. So, there were not many people you could look up to and say, wow, there's someone who studied in that field and I'd like to be that. You just saw people at your later stage in your life and you look at them. So my journey started off studying horticulture and focusing more on horticulture, then being in a botanical garden. I've only worked in my life in botanical gardens within this umbrella of our South African National Botanical Gardens. Starting off as an intern in KwaZulu-Natal, which is almost 2,000 kilometers from here, north. And then coming down to Cape Town and working here in our sort of a main sort of a botanical garden or flagship botanical garden in South Africa. Yeah, so and through that, I've grown the interest from useful and medicinal plants to cycads, which my sort of role, part of my role here requires me to do every day. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you. Will, would you like to go next?
Sure. So ever since the second grade, I was going to be a psychologist. And so I didn't even know what it meant in the second grade. So I asked my teacher and she explained it to me. And so that was my career path forward. And so I got to UGA and I was majoring in psychology and had to make money. So I took work study jobs. And so my first job was in vet medicine and I just couldn't deal with all the blood. And so plant biology was next door to vet medicine. I was like, well, plants don't bleed. And so I went to interview over there and got the position. And so I started off doing the grunt work. So a lot of racking tip boxes, washing dishes and whatnot. And so I was always on time and dependable. And so they started giving me my own little projects to do. And so I was still in undergrad. I think I was a junior. And my supervisor moved back to Atlanta. And so the professor wanted me to take over her position. And I was like, but I'm psychology and this is like microbiology and it's tough. He was like, you got it, you know the stuff, I got you, I can guide you. And so I took it. And so I was working full-time, near full-time and going to college full-time for about 2 years. And early on, we made phosmins, which my boss described to me as making Frankenbacteria. So I was like, what? So basically we used a virus to infect bacteria with plant DNA. And so I was sold. And so I don't think they do it that way anymore because, advancements, and that was over 15 years ago. But so that's how I first got introduced into plants through the lab. And so he retired and I transitioned to the State Botanical Gardens. And like I said, now I'm involved with a lot more plant species. Still get to work with Sarracenia a little bit. And there is a possible project we're coming up with to involve them a little bit more in my work. So I'm excited to get back to them a little bit.
Wonderful, something to look forward to for sure. Dr. Hodges, if you could speak to your path towards the career you have, and then also we did have a question about the initiatives that the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and Zeta Phi Beta Sorority Incorporated have. If you could weave that into that answer, that would be great.
Okay. I can do that. As I said, I am the daughter of a retired agriculture teacher. Now, the funny thing is, I would not take his class for nothing in high school. Went to take his class. My dad taught at the high school I went to. Okay, so that's why I didn't want to take the class. And then it was time to go to Alcorn, right? And all I knew I wanted to do at Alcorn was play in the band. That's all I was worried about. I wanted to play in the band. And my dad was like, well, you got to do something. You can't just play in the band. So I got introduced in general agriculture. And so what they did at that time, if you didn't quite know what specialty you wanted in agriculture, they made you a general ag major until you decided where you wanted to go. Like you, Mr. Rogers, they took me out in the field and told me I was going to have to inseminate this cow. And you know what you got to do with that? You got to put your arm in there. And I was like, you know what? Yeah, soil the plant science. Yep, exactly, Mr. Whittaker. That's what you got to do with him. After that class, I decided soil the plant science where I was going. I said, they don't bite back and I don't have to put my arm up in them. So that's how I became a soil and plant science major. And I really enjoyed and a lot of times I say, when I think about plants, I think about plant bodies, human bodies. I said nature all works the same. We just have different names for it. So even when I'm teaching students about plant sexual reproduction, I was like, if you know what your parts do, you know what their parts do. All goes the same. So far as U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, how I came into this position, it was funny again. I would say Sarah Volin told me that I needed to apply. I'm thankful that she did. At the time, I really was like, I had just stepped down. My tenure had just ended because I was a undergrad regional director. So, I was dealing with undergrads from 4 different states. And I said, okay, well, I'm going to take a break. I'm just going to be a good Zeta member. I'm just going to go and be financial and, and support everybody else and be the good cheerleader, right? And then I got a call that asked me, where's my application for this position? And so, when an older member calls you, you got to get to it. So, so I got to it and I applied and I got the position. I will say I have enjoyed it. And it has allowed me to meet a lot of different people, but it started as Zeta Days at the refuge. And so what we were doing at first, we were promoting chapters to go out and engage in the environment. Because as you know, a lot of underrepresented communities are not engaging in it because they're just not aware of the opportunities at the refuges. So that's kind of how we started. And I'm proud to say the first year that I took over the program, I had over 3,000 people that visited in 2019. But due to COVID in 2020, we had to switch and become more virtual. And that's how Mr. Whittaker and I met, because we hosted a whole career symposium virtually to assist anyone in the community who wanted to know, how can I become how can I have an awesome career with U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service? We've done career panels. We've actually done we did Black Birders Week with the Black Birders Association, and that included Environment for the Americas. We had everybody in on it. It was a huge project. We was broadcasted across 4 or 5 social media sites at one time. So I was very excited to be a part of it. And again, just getting a PhD, I wasn't thinking about it. I was getting my master's, and I really said, I'm done with school after master's, right? And my department chair said at the time, I don't think you're done. He said, I think you better go apply for a PhD. And I was like, what? And he was like, I think you should apply. Here go a list of schools. I need you to go handle that. And the funny thing with how your career comes 360, I ended up coming back to work in his department after I graduated. So, yes, your career can go 360. Like I said, I enjoy my career. I love most, like I say, helping others. I love being engaged in the community, and I feel like service is my passion. And thank you.
Thank you. So in our last couple of minutes, I'm going to turn this over to Patricia Lott with Zeta Phi Beta Sorority Omega Alpha Zeta chapter to announce the winner of our small but personalized plant press.
Well, thank you. My name, like Maya had mentioned, my name is Patricia Lott. I serve as the third vice president for Zeta Phi Beta Sorority Incorporated, Omega Alpha Zeta chapter here in the Albuquerque metro area. So I'm glad to be here to announce the winner for the personalized plant press. So, and the winners, or excuse me, the winner, excuse me, was, or how the name was selected, it was randomized via who was attending the Zoom. So we didn't pick, it was randomized just ahead of time. So, but the winner of the plant press will be Beatrix Fields. So congratulations on getting a personalized plant press.
Thank you. So I will contact you, Ms. Fields, and get your information and what you would like your plant press to be personalized as.
Okay,
Great.
thank you.
Well, thank you everyone so much for joining us for our career panel. We hope you found it informative. We really want to thank our panelists for taking time out of their day to speak with us, impart their knowledge. And so we are just so grateful to share this space with the attendees, the students, the panelists, the people on YouTube, on Facebook. So thank you all so much. And we hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Take care, everyone.
Take care, everyone.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.